So it's Professor Shoemaker here. Here we go with an intro to cell references. This is a key topic in Excel, and what cell references refer to is how you get a value from one cell into another cell. First of all, here's a tip. I just want to show this to you. You can drag and copy a cell contents by clicking on this handle. That's what this little black number, or the little black square here is at the bottom, and then just dragging. Let me show you an example. So here I'm just going to type 1, 2, 3 in this cell, and when I click on it I get the handle, which is that little square block in the lower right hand corner of the cell. When I hover over it I can drag down like that, or I can drag across. So it's a quick way of doing copying in a cell. Okay, on to cell references. What we have here is a reference. It's when an expression or formula in one cell includes a value from another cell. That is, one cell refers to the value in another. So if cell B1 has this expression in it, then A1 is a reference from B1 into A1. It will go pluck the value out of A1, whatever that happens to be, add 5 to it, and the result will be in B1. Okay. What that means is that when Excel performs a calculation, the value in A1 replaces the reference. So if A1 happened to have the value 2 in it, then logically the expression would be equals 2 plus 5, and you'd wind up with a 7 in B1. So let's look at this in-class example. What we have here is a sales order with a couple of items on it, including an iPhone, a blue case, some earbuds, and we have the quantity that were purchased in each line item. Each one of these is a single line item on this order, like the items on a receipt, and then a couple of earbuds. So in this cell here, E7, we're going to write a simple formula that takes the amount and multiplies it times the quantity. And when I get that, then it's 1 times 849. Now, I have a reference here to both D7 and C7, and notice that when I click in the input bar at the top here, it will highlight the D7 in blue and the C7 in red, and it will put an outline on those cells in those colors. That's very handy for seeing where a formula points. Now what I can do is come down to this cell and simply drag this expression down, and what will happen is the formula here that was D7 and C7, in this one will become D8 and C8, and in this one will become D9 and C9. So in each case the formula keeps referring to the quantity amount in its own row. That's what's called a relative reference. Now let's write an expression here that will calculate the discount amount for that item. Up here I have at the top a discount amount. So what I need to do is say equals here and then point at C4, and that will get me the discount amount. Now I would normally take that value from C4 and multiply it by E7. In other words, I'd write this formula to calculate my discount amount, and then we'll change that to well, that's right, that's dollars. So the discount is $16.98. Now I want to be able to copy this down, but when I do, something funny happens. I get nothing in this cell. When we have a cell formatted with currency in Excel and the value in the cell is a 0, then it just puts a $sign with a dash. This one, the pound value error says it couldn't even calculate the value for that. Something's gone wrong. What's happening is this reference here, that point, and I'm just going to change this to simplify it and just show the reference to C4. That reference here is what's called a relative reference. When I drag it down one row to here, instead of pointing at C4, it's pointing at C5. Now that worked fine when we dragged these down and went from C7 to C8, or D7 and 8 and 9. That worked right because we were staying inside the row and we needed these numbers. But here with the discount, when we dragged it down, Excel now in this cell points at C5. That's definitely not what we wanted. The reason this happened is because this kind of reference, this equals C4, is what's called a relative reference. That means Excel doesn't think of this as being C4. Instead, it thinks of it as being up 3 and left 3. So 1, 2, 3 up, 1, 2, 3 left. So when I dragged it down to this cell, it points at C5 because C5 is the cell that is up 1, 2, 3 and left 1, 2, 3. Eventually, when I dragged it down here and got the pound value error, well, actually what happened is I got the word quantity. So earlier when I got the error, what happened was it tried to multiply the subtotal times the word quantity, and that's not possible, so it got a pound value error. In order to make the expression in the discount column work right, I have to change this from a relative reference to an absolute reference. An absolute reference says when I say C4, I mean C4 period, and I don't want it to be any other way. So I'm going to freeze or make it an absolute reference. I'm going to put a $ in front of the C and in front of the 4 and hit enter. Now that's still pointing at C4, but when I drag it down the column now, it will continue to be C4 in every one of the cells. So an absolute reference always points at that cell no matter where you copy the formula. Let's complete this expression by multiplying it times the amount, or the subtotal here, to get our discount amount, and now I want to change that back to money. And then I'm going to drag that formula down the column, and it's going to work just right because it will always be C4 times E8, C4 times E9. Now when we did the subtotals earlier, these were relative expressions also. The D7 was left 1, and the C7 was left 2. And since it was pointing to cells in the same row, when I dragged it down the column, it worked just right. So let's do the total and we'll finish this up. The total is just the subtotal minus the discount amount. And if I drag it down, then I get the total for each line item and a grand total here at the bottom, which is just the sum up the column. So that's it for the basic introduction on relative versus absolute references.